What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. NFL free agency, it is long gone. The NFL draft has come and gone, and that means that the majority of the landmines to shake up these NFL rosters has come and gone as well. So what I wanted to do today in this video is talk about 7 veteran winners from the NFL draft, guys that dodged the bullet, and it looks like their stock is trending up moving into week 1 of the NFL season. So without wasting any more time, why don't we just hop into today's video and let's start talking about my first veteran winner. Now, the first winner that I want to talk about in today's episode is going to be Kyler Murray, quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals. And Kyler Murray, he is currently going at the end of the second round in startup drafts as the QB 11 off the board. And he has the same ranking here on Keep Trade Cut. So it does feel like the community hasn't necessarily adjusted to the reality of what Kyler Murray's floors and ceilings are going to be for fantasy football in 2024. Now, obviously, the Arizona Cardinals, they did draft Marvin Harrison Jr., the #1 prospect, a generational wide receiver with the 4th overall pick in the NFL draft. Now, not only that, the Arizona Cardinals, they also added a running back in Trey Benson, an offensive guard in Isaiah Adams, and a blocking tight end and Tip Ryman, all in the 3rd round as well. So they've continued to improve this offense around Kyler Murray, making this a new look Cardinals for the 2024 season. And really, outside of the ACL tear that Kyler suffered in week 14 of 2022, which obviously he was recovering from during that 2023 season, he really hasn't had any other major injuries to be deemed injury prone, as some people have chosen to label him. And it's also worth noting that Kyler Murray has never finished outside of the top 12 in fantasy points per game in his entire career. So definitely a player that I am looking to get on my rosters, and probably a player that you guys should be looking to add this year as well. Now, the second winner that I'm going to be talking about is probably a mix of 2 guys, but I am going to primarily talk about Zack Moss, the running back of the Cincinnati Bengals. But with Zack Moss, we can also throw in Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Zack Moss, he is currently the running back 36 on Keep Trade Cut. He's being drafted as the running back 37 in startups. And when you look at Chase Brown, he is the running back 39 on Keep Trade Cut and the running back 38 in startups. So this backfield is pretty ambiguous right now. People don't necessarily know who the guy is. If I had to make an early bet for you, I do think it's going to be Zack Moss. That is who I lean. Now, the Bengals, they didn't take a single running back in the 2024 NFL draft, so it does seem like they're going to be comfortable enough to roll out this group for the 2024 season in this backfield. And they went out and they chose Zack Moss out of these free agent running backs. He's coming off of a breakout year in 2023 where he did fill in for Jonathan Taylor for a total of 6 games as the starter there in Indianapolis. In those 6 games as a starter, Moss averaged 17.1 fantasy points per game. He had 3 top 10 finishes, and 2 of those were within the top 5. Now, looking across the remaining free agents that are still out there on the open market, there really aren't many other free agents that I think the Bengals could add that would make this a murkier or a worse situation for Zack Moss. I think the only exception to that would possibly be Kareem Hunt. He is the only running back in free agency right now that I think could come in and take a significant role in an offense, but I just don't see the Cincinnati Bengals going out and going after a guy like Kareem Hunt when they just chose to sign a guy like Zack Moss. So with that being said, I do think that Zack Moss can provide you running back 2 numbers this year in the right situation, and he's not being valued as such. He is currently being valued as a running back 3, so definitely a big winner of this draft cycle. Now, similar to our last one, this is also kind of a committee approach or a backfield approach, but another big winner for me is going to be Ezekiel Elliott and that Dallas Cowboys backfield. You can throw in Rico Dowdle there as well, because I think he is the only other guy that is somewhat relevant. But the Dallas Cowboys, they reunited with running back Ezekiel Elliott shortly after the conclusion of the 2024 NFL draft. Now, this was a very much needed reunion because the Cowboys, they failed to address the position during the draft, and they had been a landing spot that many people had deemed as a premier destination for a free agent, for a rookie, all offseason, and they really didn't add anybody. So the only person added to the roster is Ezekiel Elliott, because during the draft, it seemed like they were really just re-upping on the offensive line. They got a lot of offensive line talent back here in Dallas. So Ezekiel Elliott is a big winner. He is currently coming off the board as running back 62 on Keep Trade Cut. He's being drafted as the running back 56 in startups right now. Now, when you look at Rico Dowdle, it's almost flipped oppositely. So Rico is being valued as the running back 52 on Keep Trade Cut ahead of Ezekiel Elliott, but he's being drafted behind Zeke in startups as the running back 62. I think that is probably the way to have it. I would have Ezekiel Elliott over Rico Dowdle in this backfield, but from an acquisition cost standpoint, this backfield is basically free no matter where you're looking. Now, like I mentioned, Zeke would be my pick of the two based on his history here in Dallas, plus his 2023 season in New England wasn't as bad as some people think. The efficiencies of Ezekiel Elliott are obviously down. That's not necessarily up for debate, but after Stevenson was shut down at the end of last year, Zeke had 4 top 24 finishes and 2 of those being within the top 12. So with a heavy workload, I still think Ezekiel Elliott can give you those low-end running back 2 numbers, maybe even just flex numbers. But as I mentioned before, at cost, you are paying virtually nothing for Ezekiel Elliott, so he is definitely a player who has won throughout this free agent, throughout this draft cycle. Now we got one more of these ambiguous backfields, but this is another winner of the NFL draft. When you talk about veteran running backs, we are going to be talking about the Los Angeles Chargers backfield, but specifically Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Now Gus Edwards is currently the running back 48 on Keep Trade Cut. He's being drafted as the running back 44 off of the board in startup drafts right now. And for J.K. Dobbins, he is the running back 46 on Keep Trade Cut and the running back 47 off of the board in your startups. So again, another very cheap backfield that you can get at cost no matter where you're looking at. Now it is worth noting that the Chargers, they did add Kamani Vidal in the 6th round of the NFL draft, and I do fully support adding him in the later rounds of your rookie drafts, picking him up off of waivers, because he has as good of a chance as anybody in this backfield to be relevant during the 2024 season. And as many of you know, there's been a turnover in the front office in Los Angeles. New head coach Jim Harbaugh and offensive coordinator Greg Moman have moved into the building, and they've moved on from running backs Austin Eckler and Joshua Kelly, who did take the majority of the snaps for the Chargers in 2023. Now, many people, myself included, felt like Harbaugh would want to go and get his guy Blake Corum in LA, bring him in during the NFL draft, but he didn't. He went to the other LA team, goes to the Los Angeles Rams. So this leaves former Ravens running back J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards as the only veteran running backs on this roster that are worth a damn. Obviously, they came over with their former offensive coordinator as well, Greg Roman. So the Ravens backfield reunited here with their former coach here in Los Angeles. I think if Dobbins can stay healthy coming off of an Achilles tear, which obviously is a major injury for a running back, he does have the most raw talent in this running back room, but Gus has been consistently effective, almost putting up 1,000 total yards in 2023. So whoever does prevail as the running back 1 in this backfield, my early nod will go to Gus Edwards as the guy who gets the first shot. They should have a chance to be fantasy relevant because this is going to be a run first, run heavy type of offense, and they are going to lean on the running backs here in Los Angeles. Now, our next veteran winner is going to be Gardner Minshew, the quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, Minshew signed a 2-year, $25 million contract. $15 million of the $25 million was fully guaranteed, and many people, Daniel Jeremiah, Bucky Brooks, all of those mock draft guys, they were mocking quarterback to the Las Vegas Raiders during this draft process, so many people felt like the Raiders might have been a team that was looking to move up in the NFL draft. There were obviously ties with Jaden Daniels, or maybe just be a team that potentially fell in onto a rookie quarterback like Michael Penix or Bo Nix. Now, obviously that didn't happen. They didn't even have the chance to let that happen because both Penix and Nix were taken before they even got up on the clock at 13. They obviously take Brock Bowers, who obviously is going to help a guy like Gardner Minshew. So Minshew does look like he is going to be the starter in 2024. When you look at what he was able to do last year from a fantasy football lens when filling in for Anthony Richardson during his injury, he was kind of giving you those low-end quarterback 2 numbers. He went for 3,305 passing yards, 15 passing touchdowns, so nothing spectacular, but it was still serviceable for our fantasy teams. Now, Minshew is currently being valued as the QB 33 on Keep Trade Cut. He's also being drafted as the QB 34 in startups, so you're not even spending a QB2 type of pick on a guy like Gardner Minshew. And although I haven't completely thrown out the possibility of him competing with Aiden O'Connell in camp, I think it is more likely going to be a competition. I do think that Minshew will win the starting job officially, and I would make the bet on him to be the guy that leads this team here in week 1 of the NFL season. And don't hear what I'm not saying, Minshew is not going to be a major difference maker for our fantasy football teams, but in a super flex league, he is definitely worth buying as the QB3 on your roster to fill in for bye weeks, to fill in for injuries, because he is going to give you some value based on the cost that you're going to have to pay to go get him. So he definitely is also another big winner of this NFL draft process. Now, moving on to our next player, we are going to stay in Las Vegas. This time we're going to talk about running back Zamir White. And Zamir is currently being valued as the running back 21 on Keep Trade Cut. He's being drafted as the running back 26 in your startup drafts. I think he dodged another major bullet in the NFL draft, because whenever you get a running back like this, getting through free agency, getting through the NFL draft unscathed is usually a long shot. But the Raiders, they really haven't added anybody in free agency that pose as an immediate threat to Zamir White for his 2024 workload. Now, obviously, they did bring in Alexander Mattison. He was added on a 1-year, $2 million deal. And they did draft rookie Dylan Luwabe. He was drafted in the late 6th round. So even though I like Luabe, I think he's a good dart throw. All signs do point to Zamir getting that starting job in week 1. I don't think Madison and I don't think Luabe are immediate threats to Zamir right away. I think this is going to be Zamir's job to lose. Now, last year when Zamir filled in for Josh Jacobs during the fantasy football playoffs, he did average 15.87 fantasy points per game during that stretch. So he definitely was a very serviceable fantasy football option for us, performing as a high-end running back too. And even though I don't think that that is necessarily going to be what he consistently does, I still think he's going to float around in that running back 2 range. And even though he isn't going to do much for you in the receiving game, he should receive a heavy workload on the ground. The only issue is that could mean he is a scheme dependent option where they do get away from him in games that they are losing. And I don't think we necessarily project the Las Vegas Raiders to win a lot of football games. So there is some risk with Zamir White, but like I said, he is probably a guy that I am deeming as a good, not great running back 2 for our rosters. And now the final winner of the NFL draft process, we are going to talk about running back Rhamondre Stevenson for the New England Patriots. Now, Stevenson, he had a disappointing season in 2023. Many people had hopped on that hype train for Rhamondre Stevenson, but the addition of Ezekiel Elliott and a very, very bad offense there in New England surely did not help Rhamondre Stevenson's production during last season. But for the most part, we can assume that both of those issues have at least been addressed to some extent going into 2024. Ezekiel Elliott, he's obviously gone. We talked about him going to the Dallas Cowboys. This does leave the only other relevant running back in this room as Antonio Gibson, formerly of the Washington Commanders. And I am assuming the offense is going to look a little bit better under a new coaching staff and being led by rookie quarterback Drake May. Now, Rhamondre is being valued as the running back 26 on Keep Trade Cut. He's being drafted as the running back 21 in startups right now. So that kind of tells you that he is viewed as a low-end running back too. And this may be appropriate just based on what we saw last season, but I have to feel like the ceiling is a little bit higher because of what we have seen him do in years past. Now, Stevenson, he averaged 14.7 fantasy points per game in 2022. That was the 10th best in the NFL at the time. So we've seen him have value before, specifically low-end running back 1 value. I don't know if he's necessarily going to get back to that type of ceiling, and he may be riskier than some of the other guys that we've talked about in today's video, but I do think Stevenson is a big winner of this draft process, and he feels like a very forgotten, sneaky type of post-hype sleeper, and definitely somebody that should be on our radars going into the 2024 season. Now, that is all I have for you guys today. If you did enjoy the video, go ahead and hit that like button. It is the best free way to show this channel some support. Also, make sure if you want to catch any future videos, we are going to be doing losers and some other stuff later this week. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit that notification bell. That way you get notified every time a new video gets dropped. And last but not least, make sure you guys go join our Discord. We do have a free Discord linked in the description. We're in there helping you guys with Dynasty trades, Dynasty strategy, whatever questions you may have. It is direct access to talk to me and get some advice on your Dynasty fantasy football rosters. So like I said, there's no risk in doing that. Go join that Discord. It is free, linked in the description. And with all of that out of the way, I will see you guys on our next video. But until then, peace out.